Hi, I'm Sam, and I'm currently in the midst of developing my first video game, an open-world murder mystery called Hardcore Homicide. And if I'm going to make a game, then I consider it extremely important to experience as wide a variety of games as possible. Valuable lessons, examples, and inspiration can come from anywhere, so it's good to always play with an analytical eye. On this channel, I am cataloging my various thoughts on video games while building my own. Here are some games that I've been looking at recently. Cleaning games belong to a genre that I didn't have any experience with at all until recently. They're a niche category that is unlikely to appeal to huge numbers of players, but several of them exist and have found success regardless. Since I find it interesting and insightful to compare similar games and see what the devs do the same and do differently across different titles, I've rounded up a bunch of cleaning-centric games to take a look at. This isn't intended to be an exhaustive list, and I'm not including games that contain cleaning mechanics but aren't entirely cleaning-focused, like House Flipper and whatnot. The games I'll be covering in this video are the WereCleaner, Serial Cleaner, PowerWash Simulator, Crime Scene Cleaner, Viscera Cleanup Detail, and Emergency Cleanup Co. Now, to be honest, the idea of a game about cleaning isn't something that immediately jumps out at me as compelling. At least it never did before I started playing these. And that's part of what motivated me to dive in and dissect them to see why they do and don't work. I know that some people find cleaning to be immensely satisfying and or soothing in general, but I don't really. I don't hate cleaning, I'm not averse to it in general, but I don't consider it a fun activity either. The idea of gamifying manual labor doesn't strike me as eminently appealing, so I wouldn't consider myself the ideal target player for this genre. That being said, my opinions on these games run the gamut. Let's start out with the shortest cleaning game in our roundup, the WereCleaner. The WereCleaner was released in 2024 by a new dev team called Howlin' Hugs as their debut game, and it's still their only game at this point. It's an extremely short game, and it can easily be finished between 30 minutes and an hour. That micro runtime could potentially be a knock against the game, except it was released for free, so you can't really hold that against it. You are guaranteed to get your money's worth, whether you like it or not. You play as the titular WereCleaner, which, if you haven't guessed yet, is a portmanteau of werewolf and, well, cleaner. You're a janitor who works for a big corporate entity called Howlin' Hugs, both the name of the dev team and the fictional evil corporation, which is fun. The werewolf side only becomes a problem when you're forced to work the night shift and have to do your cleaning while transformed. In gameplay terms, this manifests as some simple stealth mechanics where you need to avoid being spotted by your other coworkers on the night shift while you go about your cleaning duties. If you are spotted, you must eat the coworker and then clean up the extra mess that it leaves behind. There's a potential for things to spiral out of control if multiple coworkers spot you, but it's actually pretty hard for that to happen. For one, the stealth is quite easy, though I do think that the camera is a bit too zoomed in for this kind of gameplay, which makes it feel a little artificially difficult since you can't see someone you're walking towards until they're practically right in front of you. But moreover, if you're close to them when they spot you, then your character will just automatically run at them and eat them. It's automatic, and it takes the gameplay right out of your hands until the cleanup afterwards, which maybe wasn't the best decision. Not only because it automates something that could have been engaging to play, but also because it makes the game extremely easy, and it basically removes the potential penalty for being caught. It's fine to kill your coworkers, you don't have to restart the level or anything. You go through a week's worth of shifts throughout the game's short runtime, and each level does escalate in complexity, but not in difficulty, meaning each day gives you more messes to clean up and more coworkers to hide from and or devour, but that just makes the shift take longer. It doesn't really make it any more challenging. Or at least that is the case until the final shift. Throughout the week, the head of security is sniffing out the presence of a werewolf slowly but surely, and he finally figures out that it's you and attempts to hunt you down on that final level. This is a great development, not only because it brings the light plot full circle in a fun way, but also because it finally injects some challenge into the final level exclusively. Having this guy tracking you through the office, needing to constantly outmaneuver him and do laps around the building to clean a little bit here and a little bit there while avoiding him, it isn't super difficult, but it is an actual challenge for the first and only time in the game. And it's a lot of fun. It's just a shame that the game ends immediately after finally delivering on more engaging gameplay. The WereCleaner as a whole would be a lot stronger if they had this guy start chasing you on the second shift and get progressively more aggressive and wily and maybe give him new tools and whatnot each day, instead of just saving him for the finale. So that is a major hindrance in the key gameplay department. But I want to give credit where it's due and say that the overall package feels extremely tight and polished without a single bug to be found in my playthrough, which is unfortunately rare in the modern gaming landscape. The art style is nice, the voices and simple storyline are cute and charming, and I really appreciate that the messes on each level are unique and have little story threads behind them, rather than just splashing the same generic dirt and debris on different surfaces to clean up each shift. It's a charming little game that does a good job of selling the talents of this dev team, and I'm looking forward to seeing them tackle a larger project in the future. Moving on to WereCleaner, which was released in 2017 and was developed by Draw Distance and published by Curve Games. A sequel, WereCleaners, followed up in 2022, and both games have received DLC drops post-launch. But I'm only going to be talking about the original vanilla game, and that's mainly because I have no interest in playing any more of this than I already did. That alone should make my feelings on this one pretty clear. I do not recommend WereCleaner. On the surface, it appears to be a slick and stylish stealth game where you're tasked with cleaning up crime scenes while evading the police. It has a nice looking art style, groovy music, and a fun throwback 70s vibe. The problem is that that stylish surface is extremely shallow and there's nothing below it. It's a real style over substance game. Actually, it's a little worse than style over substance because here, the style actually directly undermines that substance. The game's biggest strength, the cool vibe and art style, is also its greatest weakness. It looks nice, but it completely gets in the way of the gameplay. The camera's top-down perspective mixed with this art style results in hard-to-read level design, where you can't tell which objects you can pass behind and which serve as effective brick walls. And by that same token, it's hard to tell which objects and surfaces will block the lines of sight of the police officers and which they can see you straight through. This leads to a ton of frustrating trial and error, which is made worse by the game's requirement that you complete each mission entirely in a single go. Getting caught resets you back to the very beginning of the level, undoing all of your cleaning progress and demanding that you perfectly navigate its janky, hard-to-read level design. You need to do that without a single slip-up, and all those slip-ups, in my experience, were almost always the fault of this confusing, hard-to-read level design. The stealth itself is practically binary. You're either seen or you're not seen. There's no detection meter or sound levels or anything like that. When you get spotted, you have an extremely brief chance to slip away, and that's it. There's no more depth to your decision-making. I love stealth games when they're done well. Splinter Cell, Metal Gear Solid, Gloomwood, they're all favorites of mine. But poorly done stealth gameplay so quickly becomes unbearable to me. So all these tangled up multi-issues led to me jumping ship on Crime Scene Cleaner a few levels in. There's some other awkwardness too, like how the game presents its slim story by sticking you in your house between levels, but nothing ever really happens there, and you just get faded out on and then thrown into the next level, making the fact that you're so briefly given control there to do nothing at all feel really strange and pointless. That kind of thing would be easy to forgive if the gameplay was rock solid, but as we've established, it isn't. PowerWash Simulator was released in 2022 and was developed by Future Lab and published by, of all companies, Square Enix for some reason. There's a sequel coming later in 2025, and the first game received a steady stream of both free and paid DLC. And that Square Enix connection meant that some of those DLC levels were themed after Final Fantasy and Tomb Raider. PowerWash Simulator is a game that I was wary of and a bit hesitant to spend time on, despite hearing some good things about it. I know that there are plenty of popular simulator and simulator-style games, but in my experience, too often the word simulator seems to be a code word for low effort. In a lot of these simulator games, they're just like pure shovelware asset flip junk. Is that the case with PowerWash Simulator? No, not really. I mean, I wouldn't call it high effort either, but it gets the job done as a mindless distraction. It's the kind of game that's effective for keeping you partly engaged while you listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube video or something on a second screen. I'm tangentially aware that there's a whole genre of internet videos of people just power washing things, and that a lot of people find those satisfying to watch. If you're in that target audience, then you're sure to love this game. It ticks all those same boxes as those videos, and it will let you live out your power washing fantasies. Myself, I'm not part of that audience. I don't seek out those kinds of videos, and I'm really just indifferent toward them. That being said, I found PowerWash Simulator to be just engaging enough while watching second screen media to finish the entire career mode, the bonus jobs, and the free DLC. So that should tell you a lot. Even for someone like me who isn't a part of the target audience, there's still something satisfying about starting with a big filthy area and slowly cleaning it and restoring it to its former glory. The gameplay is kept pretty simple, but there are a few different nozzles and attachments and whatnot that add the tiniest bit more depth to the gameplay. It's not much, but it's something. Where there's far more variety is in the type of objects and locations that you're cleaning. The levels are extremely varied, and it is motivating to finish cleaning one interesting location to find out what the next is going to be, whether it's a theme park, a giant sculpture, or a UFO. The levels in the latter portion of the game have a tendency to get a bit too just large, to the point where they become tedious to comb over, looking for those last specks of dirt that you gotta clean. But there's certainly no shortage of content here. The devs seem cool too, not only with the free DLC, but also by promising that the upcoming PowerWash Simulator 2 will cost the same or less than the first game, at a time when game prices are rising ridiculously high in a lot of cases. $70 and $80 games and whatnot. If you're looking for a game that offers a pure cleaning experience with tons of content, and you either don't mind or prefer to use it as a second screen game, then PowerWash Simulator is a great choice for you. Crime Scene Cleaner is a 2024 release from developer President Studio, which also published the game in tandem with Playway SA, which President seems to be a subsidiary of, and which cranks out a lot of these simulator-type games of seemingly varying quality and effort levels. Crime Scene Cleaner has the exact same premise as Serial Cleaner, but a drastically different execution. You play as a janitor who gets roped into working as a cleaner for the mob in order to pay for your daughter's hospital bills. The Steam description adds that you'll be doing, quote, all this under the pressure of a ticking clock and police breathing down your neck, end quote. That's a lie. There is no ticking clock. You can take as long as you want, and these crime scenes will in fact take quite a long time to meticulously clean. And there's no risk of getting caught by the police. There's no police presence at all. Unlike Serial Cleaner, there's no stealth component. It's a bit sleazy to lie in the description like that to make the game sound more intense than it is, but it isn't actually a problem with the game itself. You don't really miss those things. It's just a problem with the way that it's marketed misleadingly. In terms of the vibe, you might be cleaning up bloody crime scenes, but the game is more in line with PowerWash Simulator in that relaxing sort of way. There's no fail state, but there are plenty of ways to do better or worse in each crime scene, depending on how meticulous you are in your cleaning and how thoroughly you are when you're exploring the environment, which actually leads to a surprising strength of the game. Its level design. There's a great amount of variety to the levels and the crime scenes themselves throughout the game, and they do effectively escalate in complexity, though again, just like PowerWash Simulator, the last couple of levels are just a bit too big for their own good, and they get a little tedious. However, the actual level design itself is pretty excellent, to be honest, and it's quite intricate, which I was not expecting at all. There are tons of creative ways to navigate the environment that even bridge into some light platforming and puzzle-solving territory. For instance, in the first level, you need to make your way from the parking lot outside to the crime scene, which is in an apartment up on a higher floor. And there are multiple different ways to get in there. You can find keys in different places, or do some climbing and get in through a window. You can go into some of the other apartments and find secrets and lots of things to steal, which you're incentivized to do because money converts into XP, which you use to unlock upgrades to make you a more efficient cleaner. You can also work out environmental ways to make your cleanup job easier. Maybe you figure out the best window to chuck stuff out of, or you get a big crane running to move trash and bodies up and down. Other levels have things like big conveyor belts, and you can figure out how to turn on to transport trash and corpses and save you time, or basic but engaging exploratory puzzles that you need to figure out to get past certain doors or do things like draining a pool. There's a whole lot more going on here than in the other cleaning games that I've covered thus far, and I was really impressed by the complexity. The cleaning mechanics also have a good amount of complexity to them. You need to use different cleaning tools for different messes and switch between them on the fly. And you have an assortment of other auxiliary tools to aid you, like a stepladder to reach higher places, or a black light to make the blood easier to spot, or different types of soap to make blood stains easier to clean. Mechanically speaking, it's all surprisingly well thought out and executed. But not everything about Crime Scene Cleaner impressed me. Where did it all fall short? It's mostly in the story and the voice acting. The plot is as cliche as you can possibly get, and there's nothing attempted to elevate it. There's no X factor or thematic exploration or anything at all above a big bundle of cliches and archetypes. That being said, I wasn't expecting much from the plot of a cleaning game, and it is nice to at least have a motivation for why you're cleaning those crime scenes and have some semblance of a through line to shuttle you from one location to the next. The other games don't really have that at all. The most you get is some emails in some of the other ones. The only on-screen humans are corpses, presumably because the devs didn't want to be stuck doing facial animations and lip syncing and whatnot. So the story is told instead through messages and through voicemails and the player character just talking to himself out loud. Or maybe it's his inner monologue we're hearing, whatever. There are only a couple of voice actors and they are awful. The guy voicing the mob boss is terrible, but it's the player character's voice that really stands out as especially awful. One of the worst vocal performances that I've heard in quite some time. Apparently it's some VTuber. I don't know why that decision was made. It seems like that actor was not given any kind of direction during the performance because the delivery does not fit what was being said, and there are blatant mistakes and misreads on some of the lines that were just left in the final game. For instance, there's one line that's meant to be a dumb cleaning pun about mop and mope being kind of similar. It's a stupid pun to begin with, but instead of saying mopping here is as effective as moping around, the voice actor instead said mopping here is as effective as mopping around. It's like, come on, obviously that doesn't make any sense. Why would you keep that in the game? So that aspect of the game is bad, but at least it's bad in a funny way. I got plenty of laughs from it, and the game does not take itself seriously, so it's fine. And speaking of funny, I really wish that every game that lets you pick up and move corpses incorporated the ragdoll physics of Crime Scene Cleaner. It never stopped being fun to hurl these bodies across the map. I spent way more time than I'd care to admit trying to pull off trick shots with the corpses. Like, oh, I wonder if I can ricochet this corpse off of that lamppost and into the back of the pickup truck. Or I wonder if I can bank that corpse off the corner through a window and into a dumpster. It was good fun. So it has its share of issues, but I really enjoyed my time with Crime Scene Cleaner, and I would gladly play a sequel. Viscera Cleanup Detail was released in 2015 and was developed and published by Runestorm, who only made one game prior, Rook's Keep, which very few people have played. They haven't put out any games in the decade since, but they did continue adding new content to Viscera Cleanup Detail for a very, very long time. As the oldest game on the list, Viscera Cleanup Detail deserves credit for laying the groundwork for other cleaning games that would follow. Crime Scene Cleaner especially followed the templates set by this game with its similar cleaning mechanics and first-person perspective. One thing that immediately sets Viscera Cleanup Detail apart from the others is that the messes you're cleaning up are not of this world. The game embraces a sci-fi setting and aesthetic, and it has you cleaning appropriately themed messes from monsters, science experiments gone wrong, aliens, etc. This framing should help the game stay engaging and interesting, but I'm sorry to say that I found this one to be a bit of a boring slog. Maybe I was spoiled by playing Crime Scene Cleaner right beforehand and being unexpectedly excited to jump into another cleaning game, but doing all these same things in Viscera Cleanup Detail, it just felt so much slower and clunkier in comparison, with awkward physics that make certain tasks, like picking up little bits of bodies and whatnot, it felt really artificially frustrating and extra tedious. When you pair that with the much slower pace, it ends up making the cleaning feel a lot less satisfying overall. The environments look pretty nice, but they're a lot more basic in terms of the actual level design, without as much room for exploration or that problem-solving element that really helped elevate Crime Scene Cleaner. At least early on, I didn't feel compelled to make it too deep into this game. If I had played Viscera first, I'm sure I would have had these same criticisms, but playing Viscera after playing a game that executed most of those same ideas in a much more mechanically satisfying way really magnified the issues. You might get more out of this one if you enjoy cleaning in general more than me. And honestly, I thought I would have more to say about a sci-fi themed cleaning game, but it just didn't leave that much of an impression. I found this one unnoteworthy. The last game I decided to look at in this video is Emergency Cleanup Co., developed and published by Small Room Games as their first title. This game is currently in early access at the time of writing and has been for about a year. Note that if you decide to check it out later on, it could be a different experience, and some of my thoughts on it may no longer apply. Emergency Cleanup Co. doesn't feel broken or completely unfinished like some early access games do, but it does feel decidedly bare bones. That's not to say there isn't a lot of content here. There are plenty of levels and tools and upgrades and whatnot, but everything feels decidedly empty and lacking in polish, though not to an extreme degree, to be fair. Some of the animations look a little wonky, like a vacuuming animation that might make you motion sick. The environments look just barely good enough. There are lots of reused spaces and assets throughout, but there's a good variety of trash to pick up at least. I mean, that's something. If the early access period is used well, then that layer of polish and refinement that the current game needs could make its way into the final project. This game is similar to Crime Scene Cleaner in a lot of ways, from the first-person perspective and arsenal of cleaning tools, all the way down to smaller details like the Scrub Daddy-esque sponge that you use, which I almost feel like is going a step too far in the realm of copying your influences. But if anything, maybe it should have taken a bit more influence from that game, but just in other areas. Because the biggest lesson that I've learned from exploring all these cleaning games, and the number one takeaway from this, is that it's the environmental exploration and problem solving that puts Crime Scene Cleaner in a league of its own and adds major depth to the cleaning gameplay. Making traversing the level something of a puzzle and incentivizing you to explore with hidden secrets and money pickups that lead to upgrades, that all helps combat the tedium that is part and parcel of this type of game. Emergency Cleanup Co. might look and feel at first glance like an extension of Crime Scene Cleaner's gameplay, but it lacks that crucial depth in the gameplay, and it lacks in terms of variety too. So clearly I don't think it stacks up well beside that game, but how is it in isolation? Well, it's fine. It's functional. The cleaning mechanics all work, and there is some sense of satisfaction in seeing a total disaster of a location be rendered shiny and clean. However, even though repetition and tedious acts are core to the cleaning genre, this is one that leans a little too heavily on that side of things, and it winds up just not being all that engaging. It's one that I would not play without listening to a podcast in the background, especially given that the game has no music and is extremely light on sound effects, at least at this point in early access. So a lot of your playtime is either spent in silence or just listening to the same looping SFX, since each tool only has a single sound effect that it makes over and over and over again each time you use it. And it will literally fade to silence between loops of that one sound effect if you are holding down the use button. Frankly, it's all just a bit dull, more so than PowerWash Simulator, which was also a bit dull. And Emergency Cleanup Co. does have a power wash tool that you use from time to time too, except it's called a pressure washer here. Not that that matters. It works decently, and you could probably mistake the pressure wash gameplay here for the power wash gameplay of PowerWash Simulator, though it isn't quite as satisfying. But it's not far off, to their credit. The levels largely end up feeling quite samey, and they're generally quite small, simple spaces. Now, that isn't to say that there's no creativity to be found in the location theming, because there is. There's a Squid Game themed level and a deserted island level, for example, but they're functionally the same, since you don't engage with them in a different way on a gameplay level. You might say the same about the themed levels in PowerWash Simulator, which is, mostly fair, but I do think it isn't quite a one-to-one comparison. The theming does affect the gameplay more directly in PowerWash Simulator, since you're directly cleaning whatever the theme of that level is. You're washing different shapes and objects, which might be best served by a different approach. Whereas at Emergency Cleanup Co., you're mostly just picking up trash and cleaning the same stains with a different background. Also, there's no way to jump or crouch. Why? Both would be useful. Far too often you get stuck on some geometry that's barely above ground level, and you have to tediously walk all the way around it. And also, cleaning things that are low down below other props is more annoying than it needs to be if you just had a crouch button. And not to keep comparing it to other better cleaning games, but I sorely missed the click select tool wheel of Crime Scene Cleaner. There's a ton of running back and forth to pick up different tools required in Emergency Cleanup Co., and it's not engaging or satisfying, and it just gets in the way and stretches things out. And the throwing of the trash bags feels so weak and unsatisfying as well. Now, honestly, a lot of these gripes are relatively small. They stack up, but they're each small individually. And they're all things that could be improved, if not outright eliminated, before the game leaves early access. So I hope that this will become a stronger overall game by the time it hits 1.0. Okay, so that's all the cleaning games that I wanted to take a look at least for now. Despite having plenty of its own issues, Crime Scene Cleaner was the clear best of the bunch, and the one that I would most recommend. The others that I would actively recommend if they seem interesting to you are the WereCleaner and PowerWash Simulator, as long as you have a podcast or something going on the second screen. Whereas Serial Cleaner, Viscera Cleanup Detail, and Emergency Cleanup Co. did not cut the mustard for me, though the latter might be able to get there by the time it's out of early access. That remains to be seen. Now, if you want to follow along with the development of my first video game, Hardcore Homicide, you can check out the devlog, you can subscribe for future updates, and you can join the Patreon if you have some disposable income and you want to help out financially. We've already made a ton of progress since putting together that first devlog, and I'll be starting to put together a second one sometime soon, so subscribe so you don't miss that. I'll see you there.